let's try this one out here. So number one, algebraically, we would set y equals negative x squared. And then we switch the roles. X equals negative y squared. So what you have to do is divide by negative 1. And so you would have negative x equals y squared. Then you take the square root of both sides. So y equals plus or minus the square root of negative x. Now, our restriction was x is less than or equal to 0. So less than or equal to 0 means that I can only take the negative of this one. So my function is going to be g of x equals negative square root of negative x. So let's graph this, just to kind of talk about graphing again. So number one, we know that we have negative x squared. So let's remember how to graph negative x squared. So it would be here at the origin, then right one, or left one, down one, right one, down one, left one, down 3, right one, down 3. Now it says less than or equal to 0. So that means I am only interested on the left side, the negative values. So that's the ones I want here. Now let's look at the g of x equals negative square root of negative square root of x. So there's a couple of transformations. Number one, it's reflected over the x, reflected over the x-axis, and then also reflected over the y-axis. Reflected over the y-axis. So thinking about how that's graphed. Number one, a general square root looks like this. Okay, so when we reflect it over the x-axis, let's do reflecting over the x-axis. So what's going to do, it's going to go upside down. Then if we reflect it over the y, it's going to reflect over the y-axis. So it's actually going to flip one more time. So the way that this graph looks like, therefore, is that it is going to be, starts down here, and then it goes through this point here, and then up 1, down 1, 3. And then let's draw it. It looks like this. Okay? And again, if you take a look at that line of reflection of the y equals x, it is reflected across that line. Okay, so just kind of understanding how the graphs work and what they look like and why we're taking a look at greater than or less than or equal to 0 and how that affects it. Let's find the inverse of a cubic function now. Same process again. So f of x is y. So y equals 2x cubed plus 1. Switch the roles. X equals 2y cubed plus 1. Then solve for y. So subtract 1. X minus 1 equals 2y cubed divided by 2. So now we have x minus 1 over 2 equals y cubed. Then you cube root each side to get rid of that cube. And so our new function is g of x, or inverse functions is g of x equals cube root of x minus 1 over 2. And don't worry about rationalizing the denominator or anything else. Just leave it as it is. So pause the video and try out number 8. Okay, so if you tried it out, y equals negative x cubed plus 4. And then switch the roles. And then solve for y. X minus 4 equals negative y cubed divided by a negative 1. So therefore this is negative x plus 4 equals y cubed. Take the cube root. So g of x equals cube root of negative x plus 4. The next video we will do finding the inverse of a radical function.